Hello, everybody. So Scott Golden here with the um, WCW Saturday Night Series for the 1990 edition here. This is the 12/22/90 edition. Obviously, 1990, a new year for us. We've got what's available in up until that point. We'll always go back and fill in gaps if and when we can. Bobby Eaton and the Italian Stallion kicking things off here. Bobby Eaton going through a bit of a rough patch. The Midnight Express officially gone from the promotion at the time, I'm pretty sure. And so Bobby Eaton kind of doing the singles thing doesn't really necessarily go all that well for him because he does okay, but at the same time, Bobby Eaton just thrown into non-sequential matches that matter but don't matter in all honesty. Eaton, though, and the Italian Stallion, a guy who never really gets a major push, but is a pretty major independent guy because he gets guys like Matt Hardy, Shannon Moore, Jeff Hardy, and others involved in doing dark matches around 95 or so, 94, 95. And I mean, he has a reasonably competitive match with Bobby Eaton here, which is surprising. Although that's one thing about Eaton at the time, makes his enhancement talents look really good where he can. Then we see Michael Wallstreet promising that he is the computerized man of the future. Alexander York is going to lead him to victory. Alexander York, of course, leading the York Foundation stable, which is a relatively new concept at the time. Not exactly the best of concepts, but a new one. Rick Steiner out there in an enhancement match at the time. Also, Norman, the Trucker Norman, aka Norman the Lunatic, out there doing the Santa thing, and Rick Steiner gets distracted by that during his enhancement match, at least for a few seconds, although it doesn't really lead to anything terrible there. We kind of see Steiner toss his man to the outside. Steiner hits the belly to belly suplex on the Steiner line and a victory there. The team of the Freebirds, Jimmy Garvin and Michael Hayes, basically come out and try to make fun of Rick Steiner. Also convince him that he should defend the tag team championships against them in a captain's match. They'll get a future title shot if Hayes can beat Steiner. Steiner agrees to the fight. Steiner basically portrayed as a person who is a little mentally slow here. Highlights of the match between Stan Hansen and Lex Luger at the time, around at the same time, during a WCW wrap-up segment with Gordon Solie. Gordon Solie, of course, the voice of both Georgia and Florida wrestling throughout the years, so he's having a little extra credibility there. Also, the reveal of Ric Flair as the Black Scorpion of Starrcade 90. The highlights of Starrcade 90 is what's here. Obviously, the cage match, Ric Flair being defeated and thus um, having to unmask as the Black Scorpion. Gonna grab my phone. So I'll be back in two shakes of a lamb's tail here in the next little while, but we'll be back in two shakes of a lamb's tail with more WCW action. Hello, and as we continue kind of going through that, I mean the issues with kind of moving forward into a more serious thing with the WCW run. I mean, then there's a Brian Pillman match here, which Pillman at the time lacking clear direction, doing an enhancement match here. Uh, and the opponent goes diving through the middle ropes. Basic enough. Pillman kind of does the baseball slide drop kick, dives over the top. Pillman at the time just basically getting his feet wet within like first year on the national scene. Of course, breaking in like 86, 87 and doing up to the 1990 time frame, doing more in relation to the nature of kind of Calgary area and catching on with Bruce Hart and that. but I mean, doing some pretty heavy highlights. Sid Vicious up next. Sid Vicious doing a enhancement squash match here. Sid obviously not a guy that you're gonna expect much from in this time frame, kind of having done the Horseman thing and the enhancement match. Scott Sandlin, basic for Sid. Sid wearing a singlet, kind of doing. I mean, Sid making fun of just about everybody and kind of being adversarial with the crowd. The crowd's still behind Sid regardless because of the look, kind of like Hulk Hogan. Also making fun of Norman the Lunatic, which lead to their match. Norman still doing the Santa Claus gimmick there, and ultimately Sid manages a couple of punches, kicks, and a few power bombs. As it were, Sid also attacks Norman the Lunatic, aka Santa Claus, and does that post match 3 days away from Christmas. That must have been fun to explain to the kids watching at home. Anyway, we see a enhancement match involving Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes, of course, coming in, Big Cat, and has not moved in Motor City Madman, his tag team partner. Motor City Madman doesn't last very long. I think he's gone by the beginning of 1991 or very soon thereafter. Hughes is more of the football player, not yet doing the bodyguard thing that he ends up doing for Lex Luger. Hughes kind of pushes back and does some really basic things. Also, there is a pretty aggressive nature, Motor City Madman, coming forward, and the character doesn't last very long, although he does manage to get a victory, including the backbreaker torture rack, almost mocking Lex Luger, is Mr. Hughes at the time, and ultimately things keep going there, and ultimately kind of get continuation of the brawl between Doom and Ric Flair from the previous Starrcade, and basic things. The team of Doom kind of going babyface, although that never really happens. A enhancement match with Ricky Morton and I believe one of the Cuban assassins without the mask, deep arm drags for Ricky Morton. Ricky Morton, of course, not having Robert Gibson here. I think the Rock and Roll Express is taking a break around 88 or so, something like that. Although I do believe they do a couple of matches in 1990 together as a team, but it's rare. Of course, Gibson comes back in 1991 for the feud with Ricky Morton as part of the York Foundation, Richard Morton, as it were. And then we go to a continuation of squash matches. Then we see Z-Man and Dutch Mantel, Z-Man Tom Zink and Dutch Mantel, Z-Man still managing to be a major force at the time, television champion, former and U.S. Tag Champion with Brian Pillman in 1990. Actually looking forward to going through this 1990 stuff with y'all because 1990 is one of those years I did not see much WCW at the time. Looking back, realizing that I did see some WCW when it originally aired in 1991. I thought I didn't see it till 92, but weekly viewership didn't begin until 92. Also beginning to realize that my first match that I saw was probably late 88 instead of 89 like I thought. I do know that my first house show was March of 89. Anyway, so just an interesting thing. And folks that have been fans of wrestling longer than I always enjoy listening to, talking to, and all that because there's a certain level of nostalgia, but there's also better quality wrestling back then. Anyway, Tom Zink finally does get a victory with a missile dropkick and talks about wanting to be a champion with Paul Heyman. Heyman doing the majority of interviewing at the time. Master Blaster's out here and kind of doing a squash match. Master Blaster, I mean, one of which is Kevin Nash, the other of which I believe is Al Green, and they kind of go around at the time here. And they are certainly mocking things, making things pretty simple, and the punch kick, the basic stuff, nothing worth necessarily taking a complete look at. clotheslines. Really, actually, a very weak squash match, as it were. But it works to get the people up and in and around the area. So then we see a benefit of Junkyard Dog facing Joe Kazana becoming a Smoky Mountain enhancement talent at the time, or a few years later, 92. Junkyard Dog, obviously not in the best of physical shape. Punch kick, very basic offense because he can't do much as it is, but also managing to get the win with the thump power slam. Then highlights of the Black Scorpion and Sting. Wildfire Tommy Rich also in an enhancement match upcoming. Wildfire Tommy Rich, kind of as a former NWA champion, should be given more respect. Michael Wallstreet, who has joined the York Foundation, founding member of the York Foundation. Some elbow drops and very basic things there, as Rich and Wallstreet, aka Mike Rotundo, go at it. There is I believe, 7-minute time limit put on the match, and they go back and forth. Very basic, almost Memphis style match here, although with both guys having an old school start. You can definitely see, and Tommy Rich kind of comes up, but the Michael Wallstreet and the York Foundation thing had been caught at the end of the match, and meaning Mike Rotundo, holding onto the ropes, getting the win in quick order. Michael Hayes up next with the captain's match with Rick Steiner, as promised earlier before. They are given about 9 minutes or so, probably about 7 minutes of actual action. Jimmy Garvin out to second his man, Michael Hayes. That match basically is Steiner pretty dominant throughout, but obviously Rick Steiner eventually manages to get the use of the foreign object and the continuation, and Rick Steiner does get the victory, but it is reversed. Then we go back to the arena or the studio, kind of closing the match off here. We'll be back with more right after this.